John Steinberg, BuzzFeed president and COO, CNBC contributor. Always good to have you, John.
Good to be here.
To you. We're going to start with Bitcoin today. Mt. Gox, of course, what was once the largest Bitcoin trading platform, has now been subpoenaed by federal regulators. Comes just one day after Mt. Gox has shut its website and halted trading. A lot of people asking, is this a Lehman moment for Bitcoin? I'm guessing you don't think so.
I don't think so. I think it's an FDIC moment for Bitcoin, actually. When I thought about buying a few Bitcoins, I had to really think long and hard because there's no insurance, there's no nothing. I went with Coinbase. I own 5 coins. I did that because Union Square Ventures had backed it, and Andreessen Horowitz had backed it. I felt like if these people had vetted it, I could get comfortable. Mt. Gox has a history of problems with it. The prices have actually held up pretty well. Bitcoin's trading at 550, 580, depending on where you look. So it's a shakeout moment.
Yeah. If you're a Target shopper and you see the Target breach, you get an email from the company that says, we're aware of this, we're taking moves to try and stem the fallout. What happens if you're a Bitcoin holder and something like Mt. Gox disappearing happens? Is there any
I think it's dramatic and terrible. I mean, there's potentially $400 million, 6% of the Bitcoin ecosystem that is now lost or potentially stolen. You can't get a straight answer on it. It's an evolving ecosystem. It's a new thing. The risk is still relatively asymmetric. People always say it could go zero or it could go to $400,000 a coin. So that's why I'm sitting tight on my 5 Bitcoins. I still think it has a lot of opportunity.
All of the supporters and the libertarians and all of those who want to see this work say that people were already deserting them in advance.
Yes.
And that those who were still playing there were taking a risk, and this is what you get when the market works.
I'm not quite that libertarian about it. I think there does need to be some regulation. I'm afraid if there's too much regulation, we won't have the birth of ideas and the innovation that we really need, that what could be an amazing transaction currency, an amazing store of wealth. But I think that this does show there's been significant losses. Investors do need to be protected to some extent. So I'm looking forward to some level of regulation, I think.
The question is who regulates it? You mentioned the FDIC. Other people have called this more of a commodity. Who regulates
Commodities, Futures, Trading Commission could do it. SEC could do it. There's a variety of different things. But I mean, I kind of leave it to the government to figure that out.
All right. Meantime, Google, as we said, deploying some lobbyists in 3 states to try and stop these laws, banning driving with headsets like Google Glass. Right now, 8 different states are considering regulating Google Glass, including New York, Illinois, and Missouri. If we know Google well, which I know you do,
yes,
they have an army of lawyers at work on this.
Well, what I love about this topic is that I have Google Glass. I cannot drive well without my Google Glass on. So the thought of actually driving with Google Glass on is a very scary thought to me. With that said, I actually have a friend who drives with Google Glass. It gives you a heads-up display, almost like you're a fighter pilot, and he drives remarkably well with it. I have walked the streets with Google Glass on, giving me turn-by-turn walking directions. So it's really a question of how good of a driver are you, I think, but it's scary.
But how much of your time do you really spend driving? A lot of states have weird, idiosyncratic rules, like you can't eat a sandwich while you're driving.
Right.
Here in New York, you can't text while you're driving.
Yep.
Is this the end of Google Glass if this happens?
No, I mean, the driving is one small aspect of it. People spend a lot of times in the car. I think Google has invested heavily in Waze and things like that because the car is really the third place as I think about it. You've got desktop, you've got mobile, and you've got car. So I think why they want people to be able to use it in the car, because there's so much media consumption that goes on. If they can get this approved, it could be a huge traffic driver for them.
And you
pun intended.
Kayla mentions texting, for which you have to look down.
Yes.
Right? That is, those 2 seconds are often the difference between life and death. And Google, you could make a case, actually prevents having to look down like that.
Well, and you could also make the argument that if you're seeing the turn-by-turn directions up here as opposed to your GPS here, you're actually net safer. You don't have to look here to see where you turn or don't turn. So they need to do testing. My advice would be to build a giant course and actually test out how distracted or not distracted are people using these headsets.
But how do you know someone's looking at GPS and not watching a movie?
Well, I mean, they could lock it down, right? A lot of these systems now can tell when you're in motion. They could potentially restrict the activities. And look, Google tends to be a company that takes these things seriously. I think they would probably lock down the ability to watch a movie while driving.
Another big story affecting technology. Apple is joining a host of other companies, urging the governor of Arizona, Jan Brewer, to veto this bill that would allow business owners with strong religious beliefs to deny service to gays and lesbians. Other companies opposing the bill include Yelp, Delta, American Airlines, Intel, AT&T. I saw Marriott on this list. What's at stake here? What's at stake for companies in that area?
I think first of all, I think it's a terrible bill that needs to obviously be vetoed. And what I think that's great about these companies that are in the local space, I think it's great that Jeremy Stoppelman came out against the bill, because after all, Yelp is the definitive platform that people go to look for local businesses to frequent. Same with OpenTable, same with TripAdvisor. These businesses in the local space should really come out, because it's their human rights stuff that's at stake as much as anybody.
Well, it is also the bottom line that's at stake. If you lose business, if you deny business, then that is less money that you're bringing in. But to what extent do you think that OpenTable or Yelp should leave it up to local businesses to decide?
No, I think this is a human rights issue, and I think it's great to see these businesses leaning forward and coming out against the bill and calling for a veto. It's just the right thing to do, and it's great to see these businesses do that.
Whether you agree with the bill or not, there was a hotel owner on Nightly News last night talking about the lost revenue, right?
Yep.
Even if you
Yep.
And a boycott occurs, that's going to have an effect on the state's economy, or at least Phoenix's economy.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of businesses are not going to want to do business there. And a lot of the open letters that I've seen from AT&T, Delta's made comments on this as well. PetSmart last night on Closing Bell with Kelly, the CEO, came out against it. They're not going to want to expand as rapidly in these states because not only is it bad business, it's again bad human rights.
It's exclusive.
And so I think that that's a huge risk as well. There's both the frequency of the shoppers, and then there's also the expansion of businesses for call centers and things of that nature as well.
Well, it's a huge, obviously, nationwide debate, and she did tweet, I think, last night or this morning, say she would do the right thing for the state, but she has until Friday to veto it, or it automatically becomes law.
I think it has to get vetoed. I mean, I just can't imagine a law like that getting passed.
Yeah. We'll come back to you in a moment, John.